I'm Hazel Matthews, 32, standing in the foyer of my new $960,000 home, the culmination of years of sacrifice and hustle. The marble countertops and hardwood floors represent every all-nighter I pulled building my tech company. Today's my housewarming party, and I should be celebrating, but my stomach knots as my sister Cassandra struts in with our mother Eleanor. Something in their expressions makes my skin crawl. I've seen that look before. The last time was when I was 18, the night that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe as I show you how I handled the most shocking betrayal that unfolded in my own living room. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston shaped much of who I am today. Our family wasn't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Dad worked in finance, and Mom managed a small boutique downtown. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family: 2 parents, 2 daughters, and a golden retriever named Rusty. But appearances can be deceiving. When I was 12, the foundation of our family cracked. I remember sitting at the dining table when Dad announced he was moving out. The divorce wasn't particularly dramatic, no shouting matches or thrown plates, just a quiet dissolution of a marriage that had grown cold. What followed, however, set the stage for years of family dysfunction. My sister Cassandra was 15 when, by the time Cassandra turned 22, she'd met and married Eric, a young investment banker from a wealthy family. Their wedding was lavish. Mom spent nearly $50,000 she didn't really have, explaining that a daughter only gets married once. I was 19 then, working 2 jobs while attending community college, and contributed what little I could to my bridesmaid expenses. Within a year of marriage, Cassandra announced her first pregnancy. Thomas arrived, a beautiful baby boy who instantly became the center of Mom's universe. Natalie followed 2 years later, and Benjamin 3 years after that. With each child, Cassandra seemed to grow more entitled to family support, financial and otherwise. Despite having married into money, Cassandra and Eric lived beyond their means. Their house in the suburbs was too large, their cars too expensive, their vacations too extravagant. When they encountered financial difficulties, Mom was always there to bail them out, often at my expense. "Your sister has 3 children to feed," Mom would say. "What do you need extra money for anyway? Books? Can't you just use the library?" Meanwhile, I was working myself to exhaustion. After high school, I'd set my sights on a computer science degree. Despite scoring scholarships, the financial burden was overwhelming without family support. I worked as a barista in the mornings, a tutor in the afternoons, and a data entry clerk on weekends. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Dad wasn't much help after the divorce. He moved to Chicago for work and started a new family with his second wife. Our calls grew less frequent, our relationship more distant. He sent birthday cards with modest checks, but remained largely absent. I don't blame him entirely. Mom made it difficult for him to stay connected, especially with me. She'd forget to tell me when he called or accidentally delete his messages. Still, I persevered. While Cassandra was posting photos of her perfect family vacations on social media, I was pulling all-nighters, coding and studying. I graduated high school at the top of my class and earned a partial scholarship to a state university. Mom attended my graduation ceremony, but left early because Cassandra called with a family emergency. Thomas had a mild fever. Through it all, I never complained. I accepted that this was my reality and determined to create my own success. I didn't need their approval or support. I would build something on my own terms. What I didn't expect was how dramatically everything would change on my 18th birthday. That night redefined our family dynamics and set me on a path I never anticipated, a path that ultimately led to the confrontation at my housewarming party 14 years later. My 18th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd arranged my work schedule to have the evening off, a rare occurrence. I didn't expect much of a celebration. Cassandra and Eric had just announced they were expecting their 3rd child, and family attention was firmly focused on that news. Still, Turning 18 felt significant. I was legally an adult, finishing my final year of high school, and had been accepted to 3 universities with partial scholarships. That evening, I arrived home from my tutoring job to find Mom and Cassandra sitting at our kitchen table, spreadsheets spread between them. They barely looked up when I entered. "There's leftover lasagna in the fridge, if you're hungry," Mom said, eyes still fixed on the papers. I heated a plate and joined them, curious about their intense concentration. "What are you working on?" Mom glanced up. "Just figuring out some financial matters. Cassandra and Eric need a bigger house now that Benjamin's on the way." I nodded, used to these conversations. But then I noticed a familiar— "Why do you have my college paperwork?" I asked, a chill running through me. Cassandra sighed dramatically. "We might as well tell her, Mom." Mom straightened the papers and looked at me with an expression I'd seen many times, the one that preceded unwelcome news about family sacrifices I'd need to make. "Hazel, we need to discuss your college plans," she began. With Cassandra expecting again, they really need a 4-bedroom house. Eric's bonus wasn't as large as they expected this year, and they're a bit stretched. I sat silently, already sensing where this was heading. "The thing is," Cassandra interjected, "we've calculated everything, and even with Eric's salary and Mom helping with the down payment, we're still short." "Short for what?" I asked, though I already knew. "We need to use your college fund," Mom stated flatly. "It's not like you don't have scholarships already. And community college is perfectly respectable. You can transfer to a university later when things aren't so tight for the family." My college fund. The money Dad had started before the divorce that Mom had promised remained untouched for my education. The fund I'd counted on to cover what scholarships wouldn't. "But that's my money," I said quietly. "Dad set it aside for my education." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "Don't be selfish, Hazel. We're talking about a home for your niece and nephews. Where are they supposed to sleep? Should Benjamin just live in a closet because you want to attend some fancy university?" "That's not what I'm saying," I protested. "But I've worked so hard for this. I've maintained a 4.0 GPA while working multiple jobs. Those scholarships won't cover everything. You can take out loans like everyone else," Cassandra snapped. "Eric and I have a mortgage. That's life." Or, Mom added, "you could live at home and attend community college. That would be much more economical." I felt something shift inside me, a lifetime of compliance and acceptance giving way to indignation. "No." The simple word hung in the air between us. Mom blinked and used to any resistance from me. "Excuse me," she said. "No," I repeated, stronger this time. "That money is for my education. Dad, and you set it aside for me. It's not Cassandra's house fund." Mom's expression hardened. "This isn't a negotiation, Hazel. This is what's happening. Your sister has a family to provide for. And I have a future to build," I countered, my voice shaking. "I've earned those scholarships. I've worked while maintaining perfect grades. I deserve to use my college fund for college." Cassandra laughed a cold, dismissive sound. "Oh, please, like you know anything about real responsibility. Try having 3 children before you lecture us on what you deserve." I felt tears threatening, but held them back. "This isn't fair, and you know it." Mom stood up, her chair "My priority is my education," I said. "That's not wrong." "Well, then." Mom crossed her arms. "If that's your attitude, you have a choice to make. Accept that the money is going to help your sister, or pack your bags and figure out life on your own. You're 18 now, after all." The ultimatum hung in the air. Cassandra looked smug, certain I would back down as I always had. But something had broken inside me, years of being second best, of sacrificing my needs for Cassandra's wants. I stood up slowly. "I'll pack my bags." The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if I hadn't been terrified. Mom clearly hadn't expected me to choose independence. "Don't be dramatic," Cassandra scoffed. "Where would you even go?" I didn't answer. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out my largest suitcase. With mechanical efficiency, I packed clothing, toiletries, my laptop, and important documents. Family photos stayed on the walls. They didn't feel like mine anymore. Mom appeared in my doorway as I zipped the suitcase closed. "You're being ridiculous. Sleep on it, and we'll discuss this rationally in the morning." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, surprised by my own calm. "You've made your position clear. I'm making mine clear too." I wheeled my suitcase past her, grabbed my backpack from the hook by the front door, and stepped out into the night. No one called after me. No one tried to stop me. That night, I slept in my car in the Walmart parking lot, using my work uniform as a pillow. The next day, I went to my barista job as usual, saying nothing about my circumstances. For 2 weeks, I maintained this routine, working my 3 jobs, sleeping in my car, showering at the gym where I had a discount membership. I told no one. On the 15th day, Professor Diane Reynolds, my computer science teacher, noticed me dozing in the library between classes. She gently woke me and asked if everything was all right. Something in her kind eyes broke my carefully maintained composure, and I told her everything. That evening, she drove me to her house and showed me her guest room. "It's yours until you figure things out," she said simply. "No one should face this alone." Professor Reynolds became more than a teacher. She became my mentor, my advocate, and the first person who truly believed in my potential without conditions. She helped me secure additional scholarships, guided me through financial aid applications, and gave me a key reference for an internship that would eventually change my life. The night I was kicked out shaped everything that followed. It taught me that I was truly on my own, but also that chosen family could be more supportive than blood. Most importantly, it showed me my own strength, a strength I didn't know I possessed until I was forced to find it. With Professor Reynolds' support, I managed to cobble together enough financial aid, scholarships, and part-time work to attend a nearby state university rather than my dream school. It wasn't Boston University, but it had a solid computer science program, and I was grateful for the opportunity. College life was drastically different for me than for my peers. While they attended parties and joined clubs, I worked multiple jobs to stay afloat. I waited tables at a diner near campus in the mornings, worked at the university IT help desk between classes, and did freelance web development projects late into the night. Sleep became a luxury, social life non-existent. Despite this grueling schedule, I maintained a perfect GPA. The computer science curriculum came naturally to me, and I found myself helping classmates who struggled with programming concepts. One of these classmates was Stephanie Chin, a brilliant but unfocused student who would become my best friend and eventual business partner. Stephanie and I were opposites in many ways. Where I was methodical and cautious, she was impulsive and creative. I excelled at back-end programming. She had an eye for user experience and design. Together, we complemented each other perfectly. In our junior year, we started discussing an idea for a financial management app aimed at young adults. Most existing tools were designed for people already financially stable, not for those living paycheck to paycheck like we were. We recognized a gap in the market and believed we could fill it. Using the Campus Entrepreneurial Center's resources, we developed a prototype during our senior year. We called it SenseSense, an app that helped users visualize spending patterns, automate savings, and build credit responsibly. Our professors were impressed, but more importantly, our fellow students found it genuinely useful. After graduation, Stephanie and I faced a decision: take stable corporate jobs or pursue our startup dream. The safe choice was tempting, especially given my financial insecurity. But I remembered Professor Reynolds' words: sometimes the riskiest path leads to the greatest rewards. We took the risk. Moving into a tiny, roach-infested apartment to save money, we devoted ourselves entirely to developing SenseSense. I coded while eating ramen noodles. Stephanie designed user interfaces until dawn. We attended every networking event, pitch competition, and startup workshop we could find. 6 months of rejections followed. Investors thought we were too young, too inexperienced, or focusing on the wrong demographic. College students don't care about financial planning, one venture capitalist told us dismissively. But we persisted. A breakthrough came when we won a small business grant that allowed us to hire our first employee, a marketing specialist, who helped us refine our messaging. We pivoted slightly, targeting recent graduates burdened with student loans rather than current students. The app gained traction slowly at first, then exponentially. A tech blog featured us in their Apps to Watch section. A financial influencer with millions of followers recommended SenseSense to her audience. Our user base grew from thousands to hundreds of thousands. During this growth period, I occasionally thought about reaching out to my family. I'd had minimal contact with them since that night. Mom had called once, 3 months after I left, not to apologize, but to inform me that they'd gone ahead with using my college fund for Cassandra's down payment. Dad sent occasional texts checking in, but our relationship remained distant. I focused instead on building my company and my life. The years passed in a blur of code, meetings, and gradual success. Stephanie and I moved from our dingy apartment to a proper office. We hired more developers, customer service representatives, and marketing specialists. SenseSense evolved from a simple budgeting app to a comprehensive financial platform. 5 years after launching, we received an acquisition offer from one of the largest financial technology companies in the country. The number was staggering, enough money to make both Stephanie and me millionaires several times over. After weeks of negotiations and soul-searching, we accepted. I was 30 years old and suddenly wealthier than I'd ever imagined possible. The scared 18-year-old sleeping in her car seemed like a different person entirely. With financial security came the freedom to make deliberate choices rather than desperate ones. I invested most of my windfall, donated to scholarships for first-generation college students, and finally allowed myself to think about creating a home, a real home, not just a place to sleep between work shifts. After months of searching, I found it, a beautiful craftsman-style house in an upscale neighborhood. At $960,000, it was a significant investment, but well within my means. The 4-bedroom home had character and charm: hardwood floors, large windows, a wraparound porch, and a spacious backyard. It needed some renovations, but I saw its potential immediately. As I signed the closing documents, I thought about the irony. 14 years ago, my college fund had been taken to help buy Cassandra a larger house. Now, I was purchasing a home worth nearly $1 million through my own efforts. During the renovation process, I received an unexpected message from my father. He'd seen news of SenseSense acquisition online and wanted to congratulate me. Our conversation was awkward, but opened a door. He explained that he'd lost track of me after I left home and had been too ashamed to try harder to find me. He'd divorced again and moved back to Boston. Would I consider meeting for coffee? That coffee meeting was tense but healing. Dad apologized for his absence during my difficult years. He admitted to knowing about the college fund situation, but feeling powerless to intervene. I didn't forgive him immediately, but I appreciated his honesty. We agreed to work on rebuilding our relationship slowly. During our conversation, he mentioned that Cassandra and Eric were having financial troubles again. Apparently, they'd had to downsize after Eric's company underwent restructuring. Mom was still supporting them however she could. They don't know about your success, Dad said. I haven't told them. I nodded, unsure how I felt about that. Part of me wanted them to know, to see that I'd succeeded despite their lack of support. Another part preferred my accomplishments to remain private. As my house renovations neared completion, I decided to host a housewarming party. After some consideration, I added my family to the guest list. Stephanie thought I was setting myself up for disappointment, but I felt it was time to close that chapter of my life, one way or another. I sent formal invitations to Dad, Mom, Cassandra, and Eric. Dad responded immediately with acceptance. Mom called, surprised but agreeable. Cassandra sent a text, looking forward to seeing how you're doing. We'll be there. The stage was set for a reunion. I never expected one that would prove more dramatic than even I could have anticipated. The morning of my housewarming party dawned bright and clear. I woke early, despite having stayed up late putting final touches on the house. Every room was perfect: the living room with its comfortable sectional and built-in bookshelves, the gourmet kitchen with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, the dining room that could seat 12 comfortably, and upstairs, for beautifully appointed bedrooms, including a master suite with a balcony overlooking the backyard. Stephanie arrived at 10, armed with champagne and decorations. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked, arranging flowers in a vase. "It's not too late to uninvite them." "I need closure," I replied, though my stomach churned at the thought of seeing my mother and sister again. Besides, they're just 3 people out of 30 guests. If things get uncomfortable, we'll have plenty of buffers. The caterers arrived at noon, setting up stations throughout the first floor. By 3 o'clock, everything was ready: food, drinks, music, and my nerves on edge. My colleagues from the tech world arrived first, followed by neighbors eager to meet the new resident on their street. Professor Reynolds came with her husband, embracing me warmly and whispering how proud she was. Friends from college, industry connections, and my financial advisor rounded out the group of early arrivals. At 4:30, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to find my father standing awkwardly on the porch, a gift bag in hand. "Dad," I said, the words still feeling strange in my mouth after so many years. "Hazel," he replied, his eyes taking in the house behind me. "This is impressive." I invited him in, giving him a brief tour while introducing him to a few guests. He seemed genuinely pleased to see how well I was doing, if somewhat out of place among the successful professionals who filled my home. "Your mother and sister should be here soon," he mentioned as we reached the kitchen. They were planning to come together. I nodded, refilling my water glass to hide my nervousness. "And how are they?" Dad hesitated. "Managing. Eric's job situation has been tough on them. They sold their house last year and moved to a townhouse. Eleanor, your mom, helps with the kids a lot." Before I could respond, Stephanie appeared at my elbow. "More guests arriving," she murmured, "including, I believe, your mother and sister." Taking a deep breath, I made my way to the front door. There they stood: Eleanor, barely aged despite the 14 years since I'd seen her, and Cassandra, still beautiful but with lines of stress around her eyes. Behind them stood Eric, looking significantly older and more worn than I remembered, and their 3 children: Thomas, now a teenager, Natalie, a preteen, and Benjamin, about 10 years old. "Hazel," Mom said, her voice careful. "Thank you for inviting us." "Welcome," I replied, stepping back to allow them entry. "Please, come in." The children hung back shyly, clearly coached to be on their best behavior. I smiled at them, these niece and nephews I barely knew. "There's a game room upstairs if you get bored," I told them. "Second door on the right." That broke the ice a bit. Thomas asked if I had a gaming console, and when I confirmed I did, the kids disappeared upstairs after quick thank yous. "Beautiful home," Eric commented, looking around with professional interest. "The architectural details are impressive." "Thank you," I replied. The renovation took 6 months, but it was worth it. 6 months. Cassandra's eyebrows rose. "You must have had quite a team working on it." "I did," I confirmed without elaboration. "Would you like a tour?" Leading them through the house, I noticed Cassandra's expression growing increasingly calculating. She ran her hand along the quartz countertops, peered into closets, and made comments about the excellent space for children in the backyard. Mom followed more quietly, occasionally commenting on a decoration or asking about a feature. "This must have been quite an investment," she finally said as we reached the master bedroom. "It was," I acknowledged. "But I've been fortunate in my career." "What exactly do you do now?" Cassandra asked, sitting uninvited on the edge of my bed. "Dad mentioned something about an app." I gave them the abbreviated version of my success story, watching their expressions shift from polite interest to stunned realization. You sold your company for millions. Cassandra clarified, her voice higher than normal. We did, I confirmed. The timing was right. The tour continued downstairs, where more guests had arrived. I introduced my family to Stephanie, to Professor Reynolds, to colleagues and friends who knew parts of my story. Throughout these introductions, I noticed Mom and Cassandra huddled in corners, whispering intensely. Eric seemed disconnected from their conversations, instead engaging genuinely with my tech industry friends. An hour into the party, I clinked a glass to gather everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming to celebrate this new chapter with me, I began. This house represents not just a place to live, but a milestone I once thought impossible. I'm grateful to everyone who supported me along the way. As I finished my brief speech, Cassandra stepped forward. As Hazel's sister, I'd like to say something too. Her voice carried the confident tone I remembered from childhood, the voice that usually preceded her getting exactly what she wanted. Family is everything, she continued, placing her hand on my arm. And seeing Hazel's beautiful home today has made me realize how perfect this would be for our family. A confused murmur ran through the guests. What Cassandra means, Mom interjected smoothly, is that we're so proud of Hazel for creating a space where family can gather. No, Cassandra corrected, her grip tightening on my arm. What I mean is that this house would be perfect for my family. With Eric's job situation and the kids needing good schools, we've been looking for exactly this kind of home in exactly this neighborhood. The room fell silent. Even the caterers stopped moving. Cassandra, Eric started, his face reddening. This isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time, she interrupted. Hazel's always wanted to help family. She's single, no kids, and clearly doing well financially. This 4-bedroom house is wasted on one person when we have 3 growing children who need space and stability. Mom nodded in agreement. Family. I stood frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. After 14 years of no contact, after taking my college fund, they were now suggesting no, expecting that I would give them my house? Hazel, Mom continued, her voice taking on the authoritative tone I remembered all too well. You need to pack your bags and find somewhere smaller. A condo downtown would suit your lifestyle much better, and it would mean the world to your sister's family. Cassandra was already walking around the living room, pointing out changes they'd make. Thomas could take the bedroom with the bay window. Natalie would love the purple room. And Benjamin would have so much space for his toys in the smallest bedroom. Mom joined in. After all Cassandra's been through, she deserves this. It's the least you could do as her sister. The room had gone completely silent. My guests looked between us in horrified fascination. Stephanie had moved to my side, her presence supportive but silent. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm despite the outrageous scene unfolding. I have something to show you, I said quietly, retrieving my phone from my pocket. Using the smart home system, I connected my phone to the large television in the living room. With a few taps, I pulled up a document and projected it onto the screen. What's this? Cassandra asked impatiently. This, I replied, is a restraining order I filed 14 years ago, after you kicked me out on my 18th birthday. The room fell into stunned silence as the legal document displayed on the screen. Even the caterers had stopped moving, standing frozen with trays in hand. What are you talking about? Mom's voice broke the silence, her tone a mixture of confusion and indignation. We never kicked you out. You chose to leave. I kept my voice level, years of carefully maintained composure serving me well. You gave me an ultimatum on my 18th birthday except that my college fund would go to Cassandra's down payment or pack my bags. I packed my bags. You didn't stop me. That was a disagreement, not an eviction, Cassandra scoffed, though her eyes remained fixed on the document. You were being dramatic. I slept in my car for 2 weeks, I replied simply. In February. In Boston. A murmur ran through the gathered guests. Dad stepped forward, his face ashen. I didn't know it was that bad, he said quietly. You never told me. Would it have mattered? I asked. He had no answer for that. I swiped to the next document on my phone. This is more interesting, though. This is why I filed the restraining order. The screen now showed credit reports and loan applications all in my name, all from the period immediately after I left home. What is this? Eric asked, moving closer to the screen, his financial background allowing him to understand what he was seeing before the others. After I left, someone opened 3 credit cards and took out a personal loan in my name, I explained. They had my social security number, my birth certificate, and enough personal information to pass security questions. The total debt was just over $45,000. Mom's face had gone white. Cassandra suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. Fortunately, I continued, the detective who helped me was thorough. The credit cards were used at stores Cassandra frequented. The loan money was deposited into an account that then transferred the exact amount to your joint checking account, Eric. Eric turned slowly to face his wife. You told me that money was from your mother. A gift to help with the down payment. It was, Cassandra insisted. Mom helped arrange it. By committing identity theft against your own daughter. Professor Reynolds spoke up, her academic demeanor giving way to protective anger. That's a felony, in case you weren't aware. I'm sure there's been some This is the police report I filed. I had enough evidence to press charges for identity theft and fraud. The detective was particularly interested in this loan application. I zoomed in on a signature, where someone attempted to forge my signature, but spelled my middle name incorrectly. Cassandra's hand shook so badly she had to set down her wine glass. If you filed charges, why weren't we arrested? She challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. Because I didn't pursue it, I answered simply. I was 18, terrified, and despite everything, you were still my family. So I made a deal with the detective. I would pay off the fraudulent debts myself if they documented everything but held off on prosecution. I swiped to another document. This is proof of payment. Every cent of that $45,000 plus interest, paid by me over 3 years while I was putting myself through college. Working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, eating ramen noodles to survive while paying off debt I never incurred. Eric looked physically ill. I had no idea, he said, his voice barely audible. Cassandra told me her parents were helping with the down payment as a gift. Just one parent, I corrected gently. And it wasn't a gift. It was theft. Mom finally found her voice. You're twisting everything to make yourself the victim, she accused. We've always done everything we could for you. Sometimes families need to make hard choices for the greater good. The greater good. Dad's voice rose unexpectedly. Eleanor, she was 18. Our daughter. And you stole from her. Mom turned on him. Don't you dare judge me, Michael. You walked away. You left me to handle everything. I left you, not our daughters, he retorted. And I certainly didn't authorize you to steal Hazel's college fund or commit fraud in her name. I knew about the college fund, he admitted, turning to me. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder for you. But the credit cards, the loan. I had no idea. I nodded, accepting his partial apology for what it was. Cassandra, seeing support crumbling, changed tactics. It was a difficult time, she said, tears welling in her eyes. We had a baby, needed a home. Mom was just trying to help us and you weren't around to ask. If you'd stayed, communicated, maybe things would have been different. Maybe, I acknowledged. But that doesn't justify fraud. I swiped to another document. This might interest you too, Eric. While investigating the identity theft, I discovered quite a bit about your family finances. These are records of 6 failed business ventures Cassandra invested in without your knowledge, using joint funds. The total losses exceeded $200,000 over 8 years. Eric's face drained of color. What business ventures? Her college friend Megan's clothing boutique. Her cousin's restaurant. a subscription box service for luxury pet products. Among others, I listed. All failed within a year. All received substantial investments from your family accounts. Those were personal loans to friends. Cassandra protested weakly. They were going to pay back everything with interest. Is that why you hid the paper? The room had become uncomfortably tense. Guests were looking for exits, unsure whether to stay for this clearly private family meltdown. I think I said clearly that we've gotten off track. You came here today to claim my home for yourselves, based on the assumption that I would once again sacrifice my needs for Cassandra's wants. I'm making it clear that will never happen again. So you'll throw your own sister's family out on the street? Mom demanded. Where is your compassion? My compassion? I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Where was your compassion when I was sleeping in my car in winter? Where was your compassion when you stole my identity and left me with crushing debt before I'd even started college? Mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'm not throwing anyone out on the street. I continued more gently. But I'm not giving up my home. If you need financial help, I'm willing to discuss setting up education funds for Thomas, Natalie, and Benjamin. They're innocent in all this, and I'd like to know my niece and nephews. We don't need your charity, Cassandra snapped, though Eric's expression suggested otherwise. It's not charity, I replied. It's family helping family the right way. Mom grabbed her purse. I think we've heard enough. Cassandra, children, we're leaving. The children are upstairs playing video games, I reminded her. And I think Eric might want to stay. Eric nodded slowly. I need to understand exactly what's been happening with our finances, he said. Kids will be fine for a while longer. Fine, Mom snapped. Cassandra, let's go. As they moved toward the door, Stephanie stepped forward. I think that's best. This is supposed to be a celebration of Hazel's new home, not a venue for attempted property theft. Mom's face flushed dark red. How dare you? This is a family matter. Yes, Stephanie agreed. And Hazel's chosen family is here to support her. You might want to think about what real family support looks like before you return. After they left, the party slowly regained its momentum, though conversations inevitably centered on the dramatic confrontation. Eric remained, speaking quietly with my financial advisor in a corner, occasionally glancing at his phone as though seeing texts from Cassandra. Later, as guests began to leave, he approached me. I owe you an apology, he said formally. I had no idea about the identity theft or the investments. I knew about the college fund, but Cassandra told me you had agreed to it. Would it have mattered if you'd known the truth? I asked. He considered this. I'd like to think so, but honestly, I was different then. Success and money were all that mattered. He glanced around the room. Looking at what you've built on your own, I realize how misguided my priorities have been. What will you do now? I asked. Have a very difficult conversation with my wife, he replied grimly. And probably contact a divorce attorney. The financial deceptions are too significant to ignore. I felt a surprising pang of sadness for my sister. For all her flaws, I'd never wished for her marriage to end. I meant what I said about education funds for the children, I told him. Regardless of what happens between you and Cassandra. He nodded gratefully. They'd like to know their aunt. Especially Thomas, he's interested in programming. After Eric left to collect the children, Stephanie and I began cleaning up. Well, she said, loading glasses into the dishwasher, that was the most dramatic housewarming I've ever attended. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not exactly the closure I expected, but closure nonetheless. Do you think they'll try to contact you again? She asked. Mom and Cassandra? Eventually. When they need something. I closed the dishwasher and straightened up. But next time, I'll be prepared. No more doormat, Hazel. As the last guests departed and quiet settled over my new home, I walked through each room, appreciating what I'd built, not just the physical structure, but the life it represented. A life earned through perseverance, hard work, and the courage to stand up for myself when it mattered most. The days following the housewarming were surprisingly peaceful. I had expected harassment from Mom and Cassandra, angry calls, manipulative texts, perhaps even unannounced visits. Instead, silence. It was Eric who contacted me, requesting to meet at a coffee shop near his office. Cassandra moved in with your mother, he informed me over lattes 3 days after the party. She took the kids for now, but we've agreed to equal custody while we sort things out. I'm sorry about your marriage, I said sincerely. He shrugged, looking both exhausted and relieved. After what came to light at your party, I started digging deeper into our finances. It's worse than you know. We're not just struggling, we're nearly bankrupt. How is that possible? You had a good position at the investment firm. He emphasized. I was let go 6 months ago, downsizing. I've been working as a financial consultant since then, but making about 1/3 of my previous salary. Meanwhile, Cassandra continued spending as though nothing had changed. He pushed a folder across the table. These are statements from accounts I didn't even know existed. Credit cards maxed out, loans I never signed for, second mortgages on the house before we sold it. Reviewing the documents, I felt a wave of déjà vu. She did to you what she and Mom did to me. Except on a much larger scale, he agreed grimly. We're talking hundreds of thousands in debt. What will you do? Bankruptcy seems inevitable, he admitted. I nodded, understanding his priorities. The offer for education funds still stands. I can set up accounts that can only be used for educational expenses. That would mean everything, he said, genuine gratitude in his voice. And maybe, would you consider spending time with them occasionally? They need stable adults in their lives right now. That conversation marked the beginning of a new and unexpected relationship with my niece and nephews. Every other Saturday, I would take them for the day museums, parks, coding workshops for Thomas, art classes for Natalie, and dinosaur exhibits for Benjamin. They were bright, curious children who bore the strain of their parents' conflict with remarkable resilience. About 2 weeks after the housewarming, Dad invited me to dinner. Over pasta at a quiet restaurant, he shared his perspective on the years of family dysfunction. I failed you, he said plainly. After the divorce, Eleanor made it difficult to maintain contact, but that's no excuse. I should have fought harder to stay involved in your life. Why didn't you? I asked, the question I'd held for 14 years finally finding voice. He sighed deeply. Partly guilt. The divorce was my fault. I had an affair with my second wife before leaving. Eleanor knew, and she used that as leverage to control everything, including access to you girls. This revelation shifted my understanding of our family dynamics, though it didn't excuse his absence. I also failed to protect your college fund, he continued. It was in a joint account with Eleanor. I trusted her to use it appropriately, despite our problems. When I found out what happened, I was too ashamed to confront you about it. You could have helped me, I pointed out. When I was sleeping in my car. I didn't know, he insisted. Eleanor told me you'd moved in with a friend from school. By the time I learned otherwise, months had passed, and you'd stopped responding to my messages. We talked for hours that night, untangling years of misunderstandings, half-truths, and outright lies. Dad wasn't blameless, but I came to understand he had been manipulated by Mom almost as much as I had been. Your mother wasn't always like this, he explained. After Cassandra was born, something changed. She became obsessed with creating a perfect life for her, often at your expense. I tried to balance things, to advocate for you, but it only created more conflict. Why the favoritism? I asked, the question that had haunted my childhood. He considered this carefully. I think Cassandra reminded Eleanor of herself, the self she wanted to be. Beautiful, socially adept, traditional. You were more like me, analytical, independent, questioning. And I think that scared her. 2 days after my dinner with Dad, I received the first contact from Cassandra, a lengthy email that oscillated between apology and justification. She acknowledged the identity theft, but blamed financial desperation and Mom's influence. She expressed regret for the housewarming confrontation, but maintained that her family's needs should take priority over my extravagance. Classic Cassandra, Stephanie commented when I showed her the email, apologizing without actually accepting responsibility. At least she's acknowledging what happened, I replied, more generous now that I was safely beyond her manipulation. That's progress. Mom's approach was more direct. She began calling daily, leaving voicemails that evolved from angry accusations to tearful pleas. Family should forgive each other, she insisted in one message. We made mistakes, but so have you by embarrassing us in front of your friends. I didn't respond to either of them immediately, focusing instead on establishing clear boundaries with my therapist, Dr. Jennifer Blake. Your mother and sister exhibit classic patterns of manipulative behavior, Dr. Blake observed during one session. They're used to you eventually giving in. Your continued boundary setting is unfamiliar and threatening to them. I feel guilty sometimes, I admitted, especially about the kids being caught in the middle. That's natural, she assured me. But remember, you're modeling healthy boundaries for those children. And you're supporting them directly through the education funds and quality time. That's genuine family support, not the conditional kind you received. As weeks passed, the situation with Eric and Cassandra deteriorated further. Their divorce proceedings revealed even more financial deceptions. Eric filed for bankruptcy as planned. Cassandra and the children continued living with Mom, whose modest home was now overcrowded and tense. 6 months after the housewarming, Eric secured a better position at a smaller firm and rented a 3-bedroom apartment. The custody arrangement gave him the children every other week. During his weeks, I would often visit, helping Thomas with programming projects or simply providing another supportive adult presence. It was during one of these visits that Eric mentioned Cassandra had begun therapy. Her therapist suggested it might help with the divorce and financial issues, he explained. I'm skeptical about her commitment, but it's a start. Around the same time, I finally agreed to meet with Mom for coffee. The conversation was strained but civil. She had aged visibly in the 6 months since the party. Living with Cassandra and the children is challenging, she admitted. There's no privacy, no peace. And her spending habits. She trailed off, shaking her head. You enabled those habits, I pointed out gently. For her entire life. I wanted her to have everything I didn't, Mom replied, a rare moment of self-awareness. I grew up poor, wore hand-me-downs, never had the nice things other girls had. I swore my daughter would have better. You had 2 daughters, I reminded her. She had the grace to look ashamed. I know. I convinced myself you were stronger, more independent. That you didn't need the same support. It wasn't a full apology, but it was. As the 1-year anniversary of my home purchase approached, I decided to host another gathering smaller, more intimate, and limited to those who had genuinely supported me. Dad came with his new girlfriend, a kind librarian named Laura. Eric brought the children. Stephanie and Professor Reynolds attended with their partners. Colleagues who had become friends filled out the group. Cassandra had asked to come, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I invited her to bring the children for lunch the following weekend, a separate, more controlled reunion. That lunch was awkward, but important. Cassandra seemed subdued, less entitled than I remembered. Therapy is helping, she said as the children played in the backyard. I'm starting to understand why I've made the choices I have. That's good, I responded cautiously. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For everything. The college fund, the identity theft, the housewarming disaster. I've been a terrible sister. The apology caught me off guard with its apparent sincerity. Thank you for saying that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she clarified. Just a chance, eventually, to have some kind of relationship. For the kids, if nothing else. I nodded slowly. I'd like that too. Eventually. As she prepared to leave, Cassandra paused at the door. Your house really is beautiful, she said. And you deserve it. That simple acknowledgement, more than anything else, suggested that real change might be possible not just in our relationship, but in Cassandra herself. The journey from that terrible night at 18 to now had been longer and more difficult than I could have imagined. But standing in my home, watching my niece and nephews wave goodbye from Cassandra's car, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just closure, but the possibility of a new beginning on my terms, with boundaries intact and self-respect preserved. The seasons changed, and with them, so did the dynamics of my unexpected family reconciliation. Winter melted into spring, which bloomed into summer, bringing with it both challenges and moments of genuine connection. Throughout this transformation, I maintained weekly sessions with Dr. Blake, processing each interaction and setting appropriate boundaries. Healing isn't linear, she reminded me during one particularly difficult session after a tense phone call with Mom. There will be setbacks, moments when old patterns resurface. What matters is how you respond to them. That wisdom proved invaluable as I navigated my evolving relationships. Mom continued to struggle with respecting boundaries, occasionally slipping into guilt-inducing comments or subtle comparisons between Cassandra's needs and my fortunate circumstances. Each time, I would calmly name the behavior and end the conversation if it continued a strategy that gradually reduced these occurrences. "I don't understand why you're so sensitive," she complained once after I called out a manipulative remark. "Families should be able to speak freely with each other." "Respect isn't being sensitive," I replied evenly. "It's the foundation of any healthy relationship, including family ones." These small confrontations were exhausting but necessary. I learned that maintaining boundaries wasn't a one-time declaration, but a consistent practice requiring vigilance and courage. Dad continued his efforts to rebuild our relationship, sharing stories about my childhood that Mom had controlled the narrative of for years. During one dinner, he revealed how he'd set up my college fund when I was just 2 years old, contributing to it monthly even when finances were tight. "I always believed in your potential," he told me. "You were reading at 3, solving complex puzzles at 4. I knew you'd need educational opportunities to match your intellect." This information both healed and hurt, affirming that at least one parent had valued my future, while sharpening the betrayal of how that fund was ultimately used. More surprisingly, Dad also revealed how Eleanor had manipulated their finances during their marriage. "She opened credit cards in my name too," he admitted. "It was one of the factors that drove me to leave, though that doesn't excuse my affair." "Did you press charges?" I asked. "No," he sighed. "Like you, I wanted to protect the family, despite everything. I paid off the debts and tried to move on." This pattern of financial manipulation spanning decades helped me understand that Mom's behavior wasn't just about favoritism, it reflected deeper issues with control, entitlement, and perhaps undiagnosed mental health challenges. Meanwhile, Cassandra's journey through therapy seemed to be yielding genuine growth. Our monthly lunches with the children evolved from awkward to cautiously pleasant. She found a job as an administrative assistant at a local company, her first real employment since marriage, and moved into a small apartment when living with Mom became unsustainable for both of them. "I never learned to stand on my own," she confessed during one of our meetings. "Mom did everything for me, then Eric took over. When everything fell apart, I had no idea how to function independently." Watching her struggle with basic adult responsibilities, budgeting, meal planning, home maintenance, I felt an unexpected compassion. Cassandra had been as much a victim of Mom's dysfunction as I had been, just in a different way. Her golden child status had crippled her ability to develop resilience and self-sufficiency. The children adapted to their new reality with remarkable flexibility. Thomas, now 11, thrived in the coding club I connected him with. Natalie discovered a passion for science that neither Cassandra nor Eric had noticed. Benjamin's dinosaur obsession evolved into a broader interest in natural history. I established college funds for each of them, structured so the money could only be used for educational purposes, a protection against history repeating itself. Eric and I developed an unexpected friendship built on mutual respect. He had faced the financial disaster head-on, slowly rebuilding his credit and career while being a more present father than he'd ever been during his marriage. The bankruptcy was humiliating. He admitted this more authentic version of Eric. Not all relationships could be salvaged, however. Mom continued to resist true accountability, oscillating between superficial apologies and subtle justifications. During one particularly difficult lunch, she suggested that my success was partially due to her tough love approach. If we hadn't pushed you out of the nest, would you have developed the same drive? She mused, as though my homelessness had been a calculated teaching moment rather than abandonment. I set down my fork carefully. That's like saying abuse makes people stronger. Some survive despite it, not because of it. I succeeded in spite of how you treated me, not because of it. She changed the subject quickly, uncomfortable with direct confrontation as always. These moments reinforced Dr. Blake's assessment that while Mom might improve her behavior to maintain contact, true remorse or insight might never come. Some people aren't capable of the depth of self-reflection necessary for genuine change, Dr. Blake explained. You can adjust your expectations accordingly and decide what kind of limited relationship, if any, serves your well-being. By the time my house's one-year anniversary arrived, I had established clear parameters for family interaction, monthly lunches with Cassandra and the children, occasional coffees with Mom, regular dinners with Dad, and more frequent time with the kids during Eric's custody weeks. To mark the occasion, I hosted a small gathering, a deliberate contrast to the previous year's dramatic housewarming. Stephanie brought her new fiancé. Professor Reynolds and her husband attended. Dad came with Laura, their relationship now serious. Eric brought the children for a few hours. Even Cassandra made a brief, pleasant appearance. Mom was notably absent, her choice, after I refused to invite certain toxic family friends she'd insisted should be included. It was a small but significant victory in maintaining my boundaries. As evening fell and guests enjoyed dessert on the patio, Thomas approached me with his laptop. "Aunt Hazel, can you look at my code? I'm trying to build a game, but the graphics won't render properly." We sat together on the porch swing, troubleshooting his JavaScript errors while fireflies blinked in the gathering dusk. The simple moment, an aunt helping her nephew, family supporting family in healthy ways, brought tears to my eyes that I quickly blinked away. "You okay?" Thomas asked, noticing my emotion. "More than okay," I assured him. "Just happy you're here." Later that night, after everyone had left, I walked through my home truly mine in every sense. The house had become a sanctuary, not just from the outside world, but from the damaging family patterns that had nearly destroyed me. Within these walls, I had established new traditions, new relationships, and a new definition of family based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. My journey from sleeping in my car at 18 to owning this beautiful home at 32 wasn't just about financial success. It was about reclaiming my worth, establishing healthy boundaries, and building a life aligned with my values rather than others' expectations. The relationships with my family would likely always be complicated. Mom might never fully acknowledge the harm she'd caused. Cassandra's growth might have limits. Dad's efforts to make amends couldn't erase years of absence. But I no longer needed their validation or approval to feel complete. The frightened 18-year-old who drove away from her childhood home with nowhere to go had found not just shelter, but strength. She had discovered that family is sometimes chosen, not born, and that standing in your truth, however painful, leads to authentic connection rather than the hollow performance of obligation. As I settled onto my porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars emerge in the summer sky, I felt a profound peace. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be home, in every sense of the word. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary for your well-being. Like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves. Thank you for being part of this journey with me, and remember your worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it.